tell you a bit about this technology driven. How would I see it, right? Architecture and technology has always related, right? We began to build house, even if you look at these images, it's similar to what we call a nature inspired in terms of material and form, but they can build, they use animal skin, right? Living with nature, part of it, part of the garden in the front of a working place, right? But behind that, the way we build this is because of we began to control the use of fire. We know how to growing grains, right? We began to domesticate animals, right? And that with this uh, um, technologies, it becomes part of the way we arrange the space or we build the architecture. Why do you need this and that houses, this and that huts? Because you need this for animal to live. You need to store the grains. You need to keep the building warm with the fire. So you need a chimney, for example, right? And with the technology, you learn to manipulate the materials in each area of the world. We began to see the bamboo huts. We began to see mud house, clay house, igloo, the built from ice cube, house built with stone that available in the area in Italy. Right? So the primitive space is based on what we need and the economy for what we can gain, right? We need to do this to survive. Economy is how you can feed or keep living, right? Economy is about living, okay? So this fundamental is similar to the way you look at how the building was used, but somehow the architect, the design, the builder want that building to be beautiful. So they exploit, they use the technology to make their building unique and useful in the same time, right? For example, this cannock, right? They know the strength and flexibility of the beam of these trees, right? They know that they can put the column, the stilt, in this lock in the lake. Lock is Scottish for lake, in the water, right? So this common community hall were built with the large space inside, right? So the need to have the large single space and keep it warm, and with the technology that they can have at the time, which is like a tent. This is inspired the form of the building, right? So from the single cell house to multiple room houses in the prehistoric area, what kind of technology and the form, how is it related? That's what you need to discuss, okay? And then with the more mathematicals, in Mycenae, in the Palace of Knossos, they use post and beam, right? What kind of technology, what kind of materials that serve them and inspire the building to take that form? What is the need and the technology that solve the problem, right? Egyptian as well. Look at the scale. Look at the scale of this building. Look at this, how tiny the human size compared to this temple, right? the tomb in the 5th century BC, the Etruscan. This is a pre-Roman architecture. They began to learn to use corbel arch. It's not really the dome, because it has column in the middle to support the keystone on the top. But it's the first one that you can create like sphere-like, the circular form of interior space, and that's sacred, and that's spatial. And the technology is this simple corbel arch, right? But that's not the house, that's the tomb, right? Then we began to see the precise structural design. You see how thin that arc take shape, with brick. So the grand design of this hall, right, is made possible by the understanding of the technology of the arc and the materials, right? And then this outstanding, one of the most iconic building, the Pantheon, the dome. How would they create that dome? What is the technology that make the dome so light enough, light enough to not to be collapsed by the weight of its own? How would they create the perfect spheres? And to what effect? Why do they need to create such a dome for this building? You need to explain that. And how would that inspiration develop based on your building? And these are my building, all right? This is my choice. And how would that Colosseum be part of this technology inspiration? Right? Roman was clearly great engineer. The Gothic architecture, also the great engineer. This is the Roman developed by the Middle East, the Arabic culture builders, with walls, flying buttons, pointed arc. How would this technology has developed and changed the way the church were built, and the new scale, new form of architecture were created, right? How would they create the wall that looked so thin, that allowed the stained glass to stand there and reflect the light of the divine God? What the inspiration, what the need, and what kind of technology that allowed them to create that, right? Look at this, it's like a Saint Chapel. Stained glass was almost covered all over the wall. But if you look from the exterior, look at how thick the wall and the buttress is, right? Each one. But from the inside, look really light. It's more like a thin shell structure, right? It looked like it could not support any weight, but from the outside, it looked very strong. Totally opposite. But interior is important because you pray, you watch it inside the building. So what did they need? Why do they need to have such a space with light, and how the technology allowed them to do that, allowed them to dare, brave enough to design just a thin structure from the inside. Well, then the most important period for this approach is Industrial Revolution. Right. We have new materials, we have new way of building. So new form emerge, new space emerge, right? Once you have this glass house, you can grow tree all years in the cold country. Otherwise, in the winter, you cannot do anything. But you can keep the building warm, let the light in, more, bright enough for the tree to grow, for the plant to grow, right? And then you began to add the technology to other public building. It is open enough to get people inside the building that feel like they are outside, because you have glass that let the light through, and then it warm enough, it light enough, it bright enough for the people to gather as a public space. And how the technology allowed that to happen. Okay, the house and central, the market, the fresh market in Paris. Look at the technology, look at the structure, the thin structure. If you compare this to the space of the Egyptian temple, right? The temple of the hypostyle hall, the temple of the 100 column. How thin? Look at how thin the steel column are, right? And it's high enough, bright enough for people to sell agricultural product. Right? The other key important impact of the technology is the elevator and the fireproof structure. These two ideas, one is by Elisha Graves Otis. If you know that, we have one elevator brand, Otis elevator, right? The other was William Le Baron Jenny. He's an architect and engineer. He developed the way to protect steel structure from fire, kind of fireproof structure, and began in 1890, right? With these two, the new building system emerged. It actually started in the warehouse where you have to store tea, for example. Tea is extremely, tea and coffee. Tea leaf was dry, extremely flammable. So, and with this timber structure and the technology of, the worker used candle, so everything was prone to be fire, and this destruction happens a lot. People die. So he developed to use plaster and brick to cover the metal sheet that allowed the metal sheet to stand in the fire long enough for the people to escape, actually. And as a result, high-rise building, tall building can be built with the insurance in mind that, if anything happens, they can escape in time. 1920, the modernism in terms of technology, concrete, reinforced concrete become one of the main materials. We know concrete since the Roman time, but the production of concrete was make the new production of concrete, it make it economical enough to be the structural materials, right? 1920, right? The bridge in Switzerland, for example, they used iron, steel to build quickly for the hangar, for the airplane, right? Stadium, train station, all these large scale with the modern technology and modern material and the new need of the transportation, of new need of lifestyle that allow people to allow the architect, not the people, the architect to create a new form of architecture that inspire many others, right? Centenary halls, look at the structure inside, they mold the concrete into this kind of organic shape instead of straight line. But If you look at the way the structure work, we see arc, we see uh, fortress, like a bracing of the column, like a flying buttress. If you compare this to Gothic church, you will see similarity. Fiat Factory.
Okay. Can you still hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Fiat Factory, what happened here? We see a normal building, right? Look at the way column and beam concrete were used, simple form, but look on the top of test drive tracks. To build this test drive track, what happened to the building below? This is come from my friend's research actually. She was a historian in Taiwan. What she did was to look at the plan, and she's saying that all the column was 8 by 8 meters. And because to be able to allow the car to drive on the top roof and driving down to the ground floor, you need like a parking building today, right? And you need a certain span of the building. So the radius of the size of the car somehow driving, or set up the span for this whole building and set up the proportion for this whole building. So this is how the automobile technology was really drive the form and proportion of the architecture. AG Turbine in Berlin, Peter Behrens is one of the great architects. If you look closely at the column, we still see kind of a classical pattern, right? But the materials, the light, the way the planning were formed were different. Did you notice? Did you notice this? Right? It's like a base of the Doric column. Did you see this arc column? Look like a temple, isn't it? But it's the modern temple. It's a factory that created things for people, right? Look at this form. It's classical. This is classical. Buttress here look like the Gothic, isn't it? Or look like the column of the Pantheon, right? But the new technology, the modern form of machine had inspired the building to take another shape. All right, flying, one of the great airport. I like this building, Aeroserene and JFK airport, the old airport, the new airport were built nearby, and look at the thin shell of the reinforced concrete in the form of aerospace, right? Now, the vertical form, the need to build high up because of the lack of area in the city, right? Chicago School, go and read about Chicago School. It's a lot of architect, like I lost the name, the Bauhaus architect, right? They free the Nazi Hitler to America just to survive. So they go there and they form the new modern movement, the vertical living, right? And this is the competition in 1920s. High-rise living become the utopia, become the new way of living in the city because of the housing shortage. So sanitation, adequate lighting, large open space, right? These utopia, this new city is conceptual design by Le Corbusier in Paris, it never been built, but the idea was adopted by many other architects all over the world. So high-rise living, to be able to live in such a high-rise, you need vertical living, so you need elevator. What about fire problem? What about plumbing, the water system, electricities? All this new technology have to be included in this kind of building, right? So more and more technology will begin to be part of the architectural elements. For example, in the Pompidou Center, they show that escalator. This has another idea as well about the pure, clean interior space for the exhibitions. So all other elements that were not related to exhibition were put outside, right? But once it's appear and is arranged, in a systematically and aesthetically, it become one of the masterpiece. Right? Renzo Piano and Richard Roger, they have great hand. I said, man, this is around 1990 that we began to talk about deconstructionism. Is it like at the end of the nature inspired, people began to search for local architecture, right? They began to immerse or apply modern technology with local form. The other approach was Eisenman used mathematics, used science, technology to try to understand people and breaking the pattern of the old cities in a way to search for new ways of building an architecture for today people. Look at this left images. Usually people would walk from here to there to the mall, right? Or from here, right? That the ordinary grid pattern in America. But Eisenman discovered that actually people, large number of people from this area walk from here, want to be in the school. So instead of making them walk around the block, they just cut through the walking mall here to make people walk straight, people safer, more people walking around, right? But if you look at the grid, the common grid, and a different axis here, so it breaking, it breaking the old pattern of the urban, of the cities. And these new form, new pattern were created by scientific and the technology of the modern world, of the today world. Computer aided design. Zaha Hadid, she's pure mathematical mind to create the form that reflect the identity of the place or the conceptual that inspire her. But most of her work and many group of the architect in this line need computer to help, right? Guggenheim, for example, without computer, you would not be able to clad, to cut this metal sheet to cover the form perfectly. Okay, that